Hello and welcome to the Pocket Cast. I'm Fletcher and I'm joined with Ed.
Hey there.
Is it joined with Ed or joined by Ed? Probably
Joined by.
by.
Yeah.
God damn it. I guess that makes me the host and you the co-host.
Oh, I'll take it.
I wanted to do a podcast about the DS library, which I think is absolutely brilliant and creative. It was called what was it? The original name of it is not the dual screen, the DS, but the DS also stands for director system, something like that. Do you
It
know what it
does.
is? Developer system, something like
Oh,
that.
okay. Okay. Developer system I could see makes sense.
Maybe something. I think maybe developer system, and so it's because it was supposed to be so accessible and like just so easy to make games for, and I think that's why it has like such a weird, fun library, especially like when it comes to you see a lot of indie-ish titles, things that you would call indie, like in the way that they play, developed by Nintendo, um, things along that line. And
I,
so, go ahead.
I was gonna say I would definitely agree with that. It was one of my first impressions just browsing through the library and noticing big brands reinventing IPs for the platform, and in the form of new mechanics to accommodate the DS. And some of them are good, and some of them are, well, all of them are weird. But it's weird to see those indie-like qualities coming from larger IPs, but spread evenly across the board because you have to kind of adapt certain things to
Two
facilitate a game that
screens.
would actually work on the DS. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Did you know that the touchscreen came out? The DS's touchscreen abilities come out before the iPhone, so
What?
that
No.
it sets the groundwork for introducing everyone to this well of a functioning touch system. And if you ask me, I think it works better than some of those earlier phones that came out with those touch systems. Mind you, it comes with the stylus. I don't know if you had to use it without the stylus. Garbage. Just is the worst.
Yeah,
I
it's
remembered it being. I remembered it being better. Maybe I had smaller hands when I was younger, but I didn't even get into the system until I was in high school, and so I had to be. God, I don't know. I don't remember if I was a sophomore or what, but either way, that puts it at like 2007, 2006 ish era, and this came out,
yeah.
I believe, 2003. I written down. Let me reference my notes here real quick.
Oh yeah, please do, please do.
It came out 2004. Well, that's when it was revealed.
Okay.
Um, at
Damn,
E3.
that's crazy. I
Um,
didn't I didn't really ever play the DS as a kid, not that I can remember, but I do remember years ago. I think you were the one that put me onto it initially, for sure.
yeah, yeah, I believe so. Yeah, because I had the extra DS on top of the 3DS because I was so excited when the 3DS was coming out. I was so stoked,
I
and
remember that.
I held off on buying it because I yeah, I'd known to pay attention a little bit and watch what games were coming out, and I wasn't interested in a lot of what had been announced. And honestly, throughout its catalog, there isn't a game that really. There's a few that feel like the DS Lite title, or DS, sorry, title, but that's that I know you played it, the Friday Monsters, Attack of the Friday Monsters. Do you know what I'm talking about?
It does ring a
It
bell.
has kind of almost like a Studio Ghibli feel to it. Studio Ghibli meets Fooly Cooly is what I would almost call it, and it's like an adventure game, uh, as where you collect things and you progress forward.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm looking at artwork for it, and it definitely I reminiscent of Ghibli
yeah,
art for
absolutely.
sure. It does ring a vague bell. I don't. I If I did play it, I definitely didn't get very far, but it looks somewhat
So
familiar. It's kind of
I
cool.
believe I somewhat skipped of the introductions of I also, in order to bribe Ed into doing this podcast, I got him a DS. What would you normally be playing if it wasn't a DS being forced upon you?
Like, what am I just currently playing now, aside from the DS?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, let's start there.
Oh, okay. Yeah, right. So, a mild plethora of PC titles. Obviously, Hogwarts just came out not too long ago. What, like last week?
Yeah.
So, trying to be a good wizard boy, for sure. Uh, CS:GO occasionally, Valorant occasionally. Trying to think of what else I was really sinking time into. A couple of playtests that are going on and off on Steam here and there.
What would you
Um,
say your give me like a top 5 to 10 favorite game
all time or
all
current?
time? No, all time. Well,
Oh,
that's a fun. I mean, let's go all time. Just throw out like 10 of your favorites.
yeah. All right. Okay. All right. Well, Majora's Mask obviously also going to be in that list for sure all day. Spattering Final Fantasy titles.
Oh, give me
Big
some of
fan
those.
of 1 and 2 for sure. 7, obviously a classic. Honestly, not one of my favorites to play through, but I do enjoy it. It is a fun game. And I didn't play a lot of the other titles. Tactics, big fan of Tactics. Great one.
That's so funny that you mentioned that. That is, yeah. I have trouble getting it. I've always wanted to get into tactics. I just always have an issue getting into tactics.
Now, see, I couldn't get back into it now, and that's mostly just because I just feel like I don't have the attention span. Like when I have time to play, like I'm in full blown immersion, or it's pick up and put away. And so the DS is kind of hitting that pick up and put away time slot, but my sit down, full blown, like Jess is working overnight shift. I can actually put some serious time into something. I want to sit down and bust into something super immersive, like
Right.
a Hogwarts title on PC. You know, something
Yeah.
something that I can really grab by the balls. So I kind of struggle with like RTS strategy games for that. Well, I guess it's not RTS at all. Turn-based strategy games
Turn-based,
for that
yeah.
reason.
Yeah.
Because I was always a big fan of Fire Emblem too.
Well, I was gonna say, I would think Age of Empires probably makes your top 10 list. You enjoy the
Age of
RTS
Empires, specifically Age of Empires 2,
too.
for sure. Yeah, I
Yeah.
still get down on that on occasion with my brothers and even sometimes Justin, who's Michael's college roommate,
Right.
and we'll go pretty hard at that.
I had a lot of RTS games growing up on the PC. I don't even know if my dad played many RTS games, but we had like 5 of them at least. And
Sure.
so I played a lot of some of them. Well, Armageddon 2. So no, Total Annihilation 2. That's the
Oh,
one I
okay.
played a lot of.
I gotcha. I don't think I ever played Total Annihilation games.
Just too much pressure, man. That's
No, I definitely get that, and you know, I even only ever really play AoE 2 for the nostalgia, and mostly because it's just we have really high tier strategy gameplay, just muscle memory at this point. So the only thing you're really trying to do is make sure you don't forget to hit a click or something like that. Getting into a newer RTS like that, I struggle because I have to relearn how the mechanics work and what it is that I'm trying to macro.
yeah,
And
yep. I know
I don't
exactly
have
what you
the
mean. You're
patience
trying to
for it.
figure out the strategy instead of actually play the. Yeah,
Right. So I struggle with something like that anymore. But AoE 2 would still be on that list for sure.
put you on the spot.
Yeah, you really did. Now I've got to actually like branch out. I was in total DS mode in
Yeah,
terms of my
I'll
headspace.
give you
So
some of
I
mine.
gotta.
I'll
Oh,
dig
I'd
into some of
love to hear
mine
it.
to help you think about. So I have to put Half-Life 1 is definitely near the top of that
Oh,
list. Like that's just that
oh,
game
immediately
that
embarrassed. I should not have left that
almost
out.
like an album. It has to be something to me
Mhm.
that I can play again and again. At the same time, I would put up Judge Dredd versus Death. Is that what that game is called? On
Are you
that
talking
like
about the GameCube title?
yeah, the GameCube. I think it's on other consoles too, but yes, the GameCube
Yeah, you're
title.
probably right.
Yeah. Um Not a great game, but absolutely one that, once
So
again,
much
I have
fun.
played it through so many times, and I could play it through again and again. Excellent game.
Yeah, that is a
Counter-Strike has
fantastic
to go
one.
on that list, but I mean, that's one that's like, do I
Yeah.
enjoy that or is that an addiction? And I think that's more on the addiction side.
Yeah.
And I don't even
It's
do.
not even a game that I like to
It's
play.
not even crates that I
Yeah,
do. Yeah, sometimes you're like, I just want a toxic experience. I need
true.
something just
But the
truly.
social aspect of it is equally addictive, I would say.
Yeah, yeah, it can be because sometimes you
It's
get a
not
really cool
always
team, and that's rewarding
absolutely.
too. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's quite a shitload of nostalgia, packed into that
Um,
as well.
I also would put King's Quest, specifically King's Quest 6 on there.
Okay.
Have you ever played any of the King's Quest games?
That's another series I've never played. I've heard good things though.
It's a Sierra. It's Sierra. I don't know what the other, but they put out Half-Life actually as well.
What?
But it's totally different from Sierra Entertainment. Is that what it is? Maybe it. They put
Yeah, it
out
is Sierra Entertainment.
Monkey's Island. Um,
Oh,
all
okay.
those like point and click adventure type games where if you
Yep.
miss one thing way down the line, it's gonna totally just fuck your day up. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, that's King's Quest, absolutely.
Cool.
That just, but that's one of those games that just it's the lore and the storytelling was just like incredible. And I played that game at a young age, so it just like sucked me in. And then you have to think of like Pokemon Silver, Silver and before that, like Yellow, like any of the Yellow. I don't have it for. Yellow's fine. I would play Yellow, I guess, but Blue,
Yeah.
Red, Silver, Gold, Diamond. Those games, just the like we were discussing the other day, the ability to when you're playing a game that doesn't have the best graphics, your imagination that immediately comes out and then makes you feel like
Oh,
a kid again. Like that,
absolutely.
that is
Absolutely.
Pokemon 100%.
Man, hearing you talk about some of these games really has my brain working overtime. And I've got two titles in the same veins of your last two here.
Yeah.
I'm gonna probably chuck Mist in there.
Okay. Yes. Absolutely.
Mist put me on, like, it's one of those that I picked up and dropped fairly early on, once or twice that I tried to pick it up and play it, and the first time it wasn't something I had access to. I think maybe it was somebody had it loaded on their system, at a friend's house or something, and I got to try it out for a couple minutes. I was like, "Oh, this looks kind of cool," and then never, you know, got to touch it again until I was older.
Right.
And then at some point, I picked it up and I got to the suspended forest fort place, and that is notoriously one of the most dog shit fucking puzzles you have to do in a video game. And I remember not making it past that. And then I picked it up at some point, a year or two ago, and just sat down. I played through almost the entire thing in a single sitting. I just went ham, and I could not get enough of it.
I remember having like such a fear of that game. Like I had a
Hmm.
nightmare as a kid that was in my brain. I remember thinking that I had the nightmare, and then this is back when you'd be walking through Shopko or wherever, and they would have the
Uh-huh.
PC titles and the big boxes in an aisle. And I remember seeing that cover
Oh,
and being
yeah.
like, "Dad, that was the dream. That was the dream that had me like crying the other night." And like that was it right there. And it didn't make any sense to them. But I was like, that was where it happened at. And
That's so
obviously
funny.
I'd seen some kind of ad or something before it to put it in my head. But then I had that on the DS because there's Mist on the DS. And because I wanted to get into
Yeah.
that. And that game, yeah, the puzzles, I think I got to the exact same spot that you were talking about. I was just like, nope,
Oh, dude.
I'm done here. I cannot figure this out.
It's
I didn't even
it's
think to
brutal.
look up a
I
fax or
slogged
anything,
through it. Yeah, that's definitely an option. And no lie, I did not make it fully through Mist unassisted.
Yeah, I
I
am.
wish I wish I could claim that, but
I will never
definitely
ever
not the
claim to
case.
be good at games. If I can make it through a game without looking something up, it's a pretty easy game. Titanfall 2, I think, is
Yeah.
like the last game I can think of that I made it through without a walkthrough. Any FPS, I can probably make it through without a
Yeah.
walkthrough. But
Dude, I use RuneLight for RuneScape, so I'm abusing the shit out of the
yeah, absolutely.
clue solver overlays to do my slide puzzles and shit.
Oh yeah, I
I
just
don't
have the
I don't have
quest
time for
helper.
that.
I guess RuneScape has to go up there in favorites, But once again, addiction
Yeah.
or favorite, I don't know. I don't know.
Jeez, dude. I don't.
I think that's more of a favorite than it is an addiction to me. But
I think
I've just
so.
noticed that I've been listing a lot of nostalgia.
Well, and that's something that you and I have talked a lot about lately is the power of nostalgia when it comes to being a gamer.
Yeah.
But and we don't have to totally delve into that now, but like it is just a recurring theme that just keeps coming up over and over again.
I mean, what are we doing right now? And that is the DS came out in 2003. That's we're coming up on 20 years. Oh yeah, we're nearly at 20 years. So or at least it was announced, right? I don't know when it exactly released, but either way, we're coming up on a
I could
20
fact check
year,
it.
20 years
Right.
thing here, short. And I mean, I think that's about the point where you could say nostalgia. Like it's so funny because
Yeah,
that's
that's
not
fair.
retro, but that's kind of retro. That's playing Atari and instead of your Super Nintendo.
Yeah. And yeah, and I think the bridge between what's retro and what's not is or that gap, right? It is ever getting smaller just with how frequently newer and newer systems are coming out. I mean, at some point, obviously, like the PS5 and the newest Xbox will be quote unquote retro.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
But I almost feel like for those to be retro, they either have to be made obsolete through the on allowance of backward compatibility by current consoles, or we'll have made some kind of exponential leap in gaming.
But there's an Atari collection on the
Absolutely.
on the Switch, so then in that sense, that isn't retro.
That's a really good point too, because now that I've said all that and made a big to do about I'm starting to break it down in my own head and realize, well,
Oh, that's good.
no, because you can buy a pixel game that was made yesterday. Like those
Yeah,
people
absolutely.
still
Well,
making them.
so and that's so I believe we've covered our grounds of what some favorites are. So let's like with
Yeah.
that, I'm taking that segue into the DS. So pixel games are being made for everything right now. Like, I mean, just
Yeah.
modern consoles. You've got homebrew coming out for Game Boy Advance, Game Boy Color, the original Game Boy, Nintendo. They're modding the games. They're making new games. There's nothing coming out for the DS, which is blowing my mind because, like we said earlier, it's the developer system, right?
Right.
So if I'm wanting to learn how to write for anything, I would think that this would be like a go-to. I have heard that the Game Boy is the easiest thing to learn to write for. I do
Uh,
believe. I believe because what happens is you count Game Boy and Game Boy Color as a single library, and I do believe that Triumph's the DS 1800 games on the DS, I think is what I saw around roughly. I'm sure that that's it's so funny and so interesting to me that it's argumentative, like that you can argue how many titles, and like every console has it. I did run into this before I even had the idea for the DS podcast. I was playing, I was getting into the Garfield catalog.
Interesting. Oh, okay.
Not a great catalog. I
Yeah.
recently saw the Triple Jump on YouTube does a lot of interesting video game lists, and they'll rank
Mm,
all of from best to worst all of their games, or from worst to best, whatever. And they did the Garfield video game, and near the top five was in the top five was the game I first played, Garfield's Nightmare, which is if you're looking for something to play to go to bed, and I mean that in the nicest, best way possible, this is the best game for it. It is the most basic platformer. The controls are all right. Like, everything about the game is so just above mediocre. Like if it was mediocre, like when something's mediocre, you kind of hate it more. Like you wish it would have been really
yeah.
bad. This one must be just above mediocre because you enjoy it just enough. for you to be like, all right, I'm passing out. It's like playing
Interesting.
Bejeweled or Puzzle Quest or something like that.
Okay,
Um,
all right. I'm picking up what you're putting down.
where I was going with this though is there is A Tale of Two Kitties and Garfield 2, I think.
Okay,
Two titles. One I believe is Europe, one is PAL, and one is US.
gotcha.
And they are the same game. The
Oh,
exact same
okay,
game, two different games. So I guess that's where that argument comes up of how many games
gotcha. Are
are
you
on the
counting unique
console.
titles or titles with unique titles?
Yep.
Yeah,
And
gotcha.
I'm
Clear
sure
as
there's
mud.
many other ways. So I basically with the catalog that we had access to, I didn't go through and do a count, but we played a similar catalog, and we had 2 weeks kind of go through. First of all, I was surprised by, I don't know if it was just happened to be a tiring 2 weeks. We did a bit of projects around the house, but I did not get nearly as much time into the DS as I thought I would, which is funny because that is the convenience of it, is how much time you can just sneak into it.
Don't even talk to me about that. I too suffer from the same issue in that I have this little digital notebook with buttons on it in my pocket that takes
Yeah,
all of
all the time.
way
Yeah, I have it
more
in my
seconds to
pocket
keep
all
up.
the time. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I've been getting dirty looks every time I
We
open
were
it up
at
when I'm sitting on the
breakfast.
couch.
We were at breakfast, and I didn't have mine with me.
That's the only reason you were upset. Let's be honest, is because you didn't
Yeah,
think to bring
yeah.
yours to the
No,
restaurant.
because
Yeah.
no, I thought about it. I have a child, so I can't be here. I
Hey,
hate to blame him. I hate to blame him, but the
hey.
L
Well,
button isn't working on my DS, and this thing
uh,
instead I've had since I was like 15. So it's just
that is upsetting to
I,
hear.
it could be just from wear and tear. So what have you been playing on the
So no
past?
lie, I've tried to kind of just dabble, put a couple
Yeah.
minutes into a handful of different titles, but the one I definitely keep coming back to that I'm absolutely having so much fun with is the Dawn of Sorrow Castlevania game.
Mm.
Um, I think you and I talked a little bit about this beforehand, but I never really ever played a Castlevania game ever. I always thought they were so cool, and I remember growing up seeing the artwork and in various magazines and whatnot, thinking, "Damn, that looks so cool." No way in hell I was ever allowed to ever play one, and I just never had really any focus in that IP. After I got older and could do kind of whatever I wanted, so I just never really got into it. Kind of the same unfortunate reality for me with Pokemon, but solid platformer, cool mechanics, insanely amazing and beautiful artwork. Um, uh, I was gonna say a slight underutilization of the touchscreen, but I think if the touchscreen played a more core role in the mechanics, that might piss me off, and I'd probably want to play it a lot less. Because
Yeah.
at present, you just unlock these symbols essentially that allow you to unlock doors, and when prompted, input the pattern through the screen. Although I've noticed that it seems if you just don't, the game will immediately or just eventually draw it for you, so you don't have to unsheath your stylus. So,
Well,
yeah.
and
So
that's one
I've
way
been
you can just use your finger. You don't even need the stylus for that, probably. I would
absolutely.
assume. Because I'm thinking I played Portrait of Ruin was, I think, my first Castlevania title,
Mm,
also on the DS. And same way sucked me in, and I think it has the same mechanic. I think you barely use it, and it's you can
you
use. I
know,
think is the menu down there. Maybe you can use the menu, but I don't even think that's it. I think stats are displayed down there.
yeah. So the gameplay, excuse me, the game play actually takes place on the bottom screen, and then up top you have like a menu.
Right. Okay.
But now that I've said that that's the only use of the stylus, I've forgotten that I progressed a little bit further somewhat recently, and get to the point where essentially I have the ability to destroy certain blocks using the stylus. So I forgot. Again, it's still such a very simple mechanic. You basically get on a floating platform and it carries you over this pit, and then there are blocks that would otherwise push you off of the moving pedestal, and you have to quickly scratch back and forth on the stylus to delete the blocks because it tries to trick you. There's only one stream of blocks, and then it's then it's three deep, and if you're not constantly drawing, you'll get pushed off, and then at the last minute you have to duck.
That adds in a bit there.
It does.
That's
It
some use.
definitely, yeah. Kind of a cute little mechanic. And yeah, I'm sure they'll introduce additional little pieces like that. Maybe we'll see.
So if you didn't play, and I don't think it was in our catalog, any of the Zelda games on the DS. I think when you borrowed it, because this is referencing back. Ed and I moved here together 10 years ago. No, not
2014.
yet.
Almost.
Almost.
2014. It was like
So,
July
9 years
2014.
ago, almost. Okay, so been a while since you had played through it back then. Do you remember playing Zelda on the DS?
I do remember. What is it? The Phantom Hourglass.
Phantom Hourglass.
Yeah, I do. I remember not beating it. What a fun game, and
Oh
I
man,
remember
I
utilizing.
disagree so
What?
much. I hate
Really?
that game. I remember I was just because you don't control him whatsoever with the D-pad or any control sticks. You use the stylus to move Link around. You use the stylus to swing your sword. I don't like that control at all. It's the same to me as having the forward button being accelerate in a racing game. It was I, I don't mind the stylus controls. What I really prefer is when you can play the game without or with the stylus. When that's the option present. And once again, I don't mind when it's filtered in there. There are a few exceptions to the rule, of course, but no, I'm really surprised to hear that because I did not
Really?
enjoy it. Well,
So I would definitely have to go back and play it again to make sure that my assessment of what I recall.
and I do wonder if you're
Exactly.
thinking of A
But
Link Between Worlds. A Link Between Worlds was on the 3DS. That was really good.
yeah, I do remember that one as well. All very much amazing. The specific gameplay that I recall playing through, definitely Phantom Hourglass.
Yeah,
Um,
and you have there's the dungeon that you have to continue to go back to and go further and further down, but you have to go back through your old steps. And I know that I'm not alone in these thoughts of I
I believe
hated
that.
that. I hated
I want to say that what I remember is that it felt very cumbersome and clunky and difficult to be precise in your inputs. But
Yep.
I feel like I remember coming to the conclusion or realization to treat it more like Wii controls. At which point getting the input strokes on the stylus felt less cumbersome just because I was a little bit more fluid with it, and it kind of removed the need for what I thought was specificity, in how I'm providing these inputs, and it just kind of almost like the cursive version of a stylus input,
Okay.
and for me that seemed to work. Now I could be complete bullshit and made it all just up on the spot, but that's how I feel like I remember it,
Right.
and I feel like I enjoyed the game. But I can't think of what the reason was. I never finished it. But I'm also notorious for not finishing games. Like I never finished Breath of the Wild. I literally just
Yes,
need to
I'm
beat
with you
Ganon.
there. I think that once again, I'm at the exact same spot. Just got to beat Ganon. But
Hmm.
I think a lot of people have hit. I think that that's a common thing.
I hate ending. I hate finishing games, dude. Sucks.
There are a few others that really focus on stylus controls that just bother me terribly. Ivy the Kiwi is one of them. You see a lot of these platformers that rely on you like drawing a path. You see this in Kirby's Canvas Curse, something along those lines is the name. Once again, Kirby's a ball, and you have to like draw the road for him and the ramps and all this, and you can touch him to give
Okay.
him boosts. And it just I don't know. There's just something about really heavy touch controls I don't like until you get to a title like The World Ends With You. And that goes also in my top 10 all-time favorite
Yeah.
games. Not DS titles, but just all-time favorites. And I remember we discussed it a little bit, and if you have not played this game, the way to describe these controls is that you have almost like really simplified directional only commands that are like a fighting game, like left, left, down, right, right, up, certain different combos that you're using to control in a battle on the top screen. Well, at the same time, you have a battle going on your bottom screen, and you have different signatures or symbols to draw that will attack the enemies on their bottom screen. And you move that person by moving your stylus around. At first, it's extremely chaotic and it feels impossible to stay caught up with. The game is a bit forgiving. It will let you continue to retry these battles, and I do believe it will make them easier for you after a while, and then you can progress on. The problem with that, of course, is that then when you get to a harder boss, it's going to be harder for you. So it's highly recommended that you actually beat them and get used to that. But once you get used to those inputs, and that's to be said with a lot of these games, is it just becomes so fluid and just I feel the immersion I get immersed in the DS. Hotel Dusk. I know that you kind of touched on that recently.
Yeah, I was just, while you were talking and explaining World Ends with You, I was just kind of scrolling back through the library that we're working with, and I scrolled back by Hotel Dusk Room 215. I've not gotten very far, but I mean, since the opening sequence of it just booting the game,
You hold
oh,
your
the
DS.
second you launch the title and everything, like, it splashes the icon or imagery for the to the developer or whatever it is, and it's all sideways. You're like, what the hell? And then it's like holding a book, and then the game's just going, and like the artwork is so unique, and it's this cool hand drawn stylization. You get all this pencil scratchy sounds. It's a comfortable
The soundtrack
feel.
is
The
just
soundtrack is
phenomenal.
fantastic. Yeah, I think
You
the struggle that I
you
have.
hear me say throughout this podcast that I dislike touch controls or the what's the word I'm looking for here? Where they're playing on all these unique things. It's kind of like catchy, like,
Yeah,
oh, look at my touch controls, or look, you can use the
right.
microphone. Oh, the gimmicky things. I'll say that's a gimmicky thing. That's a gimmicky thing. Then I bet 9 times out of 10 I'll end up saying in the game that we're doing, I love that gimmicky thing. So I'm sure I'm going to eat my own words on that plenty of times because
Yeah,
I do say it's the one thing that held the DS back was so many people relying on the gimmick rather than just kind of leaning into it here and there. I think
yeah.
when you
I
play
I
Grand
feel
Theft
that.
Auto, the Chinatown Wars is a great example of I mean it's I think on Metacritic it's the #1 DS game, and
Really.
it's got the perfect just it doesn't rely on it. It just throws it in there here and there for fun little tiny mini games that
Sure.
make the game a little more immersion actually because when you go to steal a car, you have to hotwire some of them.
Right.
And so you use the stylus to hotwire the car, and that's a fun little quick mini game. Boom, boom, you're in your car, you're out.
Yep.
I still think it has the best way of getting rid of your stars. Did you play it at all?
I haven't on the DS, but I have played Chinatown Wars before.
Right. Yeah, they did. It did end up coming out on a lot of
Yeah.
different. It's on the phone. It's on the PSP, I believe, even. But it was
Yeah.
initially a DS only title. So, and then that kind of brings me to the explaining kind of my idea further about this podcast, being that I want to play every US release on the DS. And a huge 1,800 games or so, right? And that maybe that's all games. Maybe that's not just the US games. I haven't looked at the actual number. there's a lot of good games. There's a lot of really bad games. Like if you go scroll through this list of all the DS games, I bet there's 10 Disney titles and 10 Barbie titles. There's just a slew of shovelware, like I said, gimmicky games.
Hmm.
There are games that I believe we're going to be able to get through in way less than 2 weeks. So I am thinking for some of these, and I believe that will be kind of the standard, is that every 2 weeks the podcast will come out. Ideally, being that we have somewhat of a community that will want to play the game at the same time that we are, or something along those lines, right?
Yeah.
Stay more current with it every 2 weeks. There's going to be some games that are probably like My Life First Horses or something like,
Oh god.
you know.
Yeah.
While I am just making this up, I do know there is something along the lines of My Life, and there's plenty of horse game. Maybe we'll have a 2 weeks that are all the horse game,
Oh dear
and
God.
we'll just play through a bunch of different horse games.
Okay. It'll be the Hell podcast.
So yeah, oh yeah,
Uh-huh.
there are gonna be some 2 weeks that suck, and then there's gonna be some
Yeah.
2 weeks that we're like, this wasn't even enough time to get into the game.
Yeah.
Um, I am. There's a lot of remakes and like almost like remasters. There's, let's see if I wrote down on the list. There is an insane amount of Final Fantasy and Square Enix titles.
Oh, I
I
bet.
wrote down on games to play. I kind of made a list here to reference as games to play, games I'm curious about, and old favorites. And just in this title alone, there's two titles that are Final Fantasy. There's Children of Mana, which I believe is just like an offshoot of Final Fantasy. Blood of, I'm gonna say this wrong.
Yeah.
Bahamut.
Bahamut.
Blood of Bahamut.
Okay. Bahamut is unacceptable.
Bahamut.
Well, you'll get shot in the streets for that.
You know?
Bahamut. You'll have to get fancy. Sure. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
Bahamut.
Just
Uh,
cripple
the
over as
blood
best
of
you can.
Bahamut.
All right, whatever.
I gotta cut that one.
Nope.
So, Blood of Bahamut is also Square
I
Enix.
don't think I know that one.
Kingdom Hearts Recoded. I think I wrote King Hearts Recoded. I'm assuming I meant Kingdom Hearts Recoded.
Yeah, I remember I played that title for a short bit. I didn't get very far, but I do remember that one.
Final Fantasy 3, I believe, is the first remaster of the game.
You know, I'm a big fan of the early Final Fantasies.
Yeah, and that's something I found interesting is I've never gotten into Final Fantasy. I have Final Fantasy 9 and I've never really gotten very far into it. Quite ironic because I love the Dragon Quest series.
Yeah.
I've got a decent list of favorites and I've got a decent list of curious games, as well as games to play. Like I said, I think we almost might want to do a randomizer.
Not a bad idea. We could each select a number of games to load into a short list of 20, 30, whatever at a time, and then hit the randomizer.
Or
Uh-oh.
we do all of the games.
Put them all in there? Oh, Christ.
Put them all in.
We could definitely do that. I can make that happen.
And then if we have a terrible luck streak, we'll dig into our list. I'm going to go over some old favorites on this list, if you don't mind.
Not at all.
Meteos is a Tetris-like puzzle game. I believe it was one of the first releases for the DS. I could be totally talking out of my ass there. It's a blast. I don't know what makes it so much fun. They shoot off like rockets. I think sometimes you're playing against someone else, so you're trying to like stack their stuff full, kind of like a Tetris attack.
Okay.
Along that puzzle vein, we've got Puzzle Quest / Galactrix. Galactrix, I believe is what it's called. Probably saying that wrong as well. Connect 3 RPG puzzle game.
Okay.
So much fun. Difficult. Really difficult. Like it's not like as I recall, Galatrix has a bit more approachable. It's the learning curve that it goes with you a lot better.
Okay,
Puzzle Quest is a hard to play game.
interesting.
Do you remember playing Flash Sonic games that were actually kind of good?
Yeah, yeah, man. Sonic is one of those titles I've really never
Hmm.
gotten into. Yeah, I say that hesitantly.
Sonic Rush is just your straight classic. It's in a fun art style. I think you would actually enjoy it. I'd say once again, kind of on the easier side. The World Ends With You obviously is in this list.
For sure.
What I was going to ask you about before we started recording was Space Invaders Extreme. I've been playing Space Invaders Extreme 2, I believe it is.
Really?
That was the music we were dancing to while we were setting things up.
Oh, yeah. Gotcha. Okay, I was wondering what you were playing.
But what is up with this system having the one like just the best soundtrack? It's fucking phenomenal. The World Ends With You. We didn't touch on that. Great
Oh,
soundtrack.
absolutely. We might have to. Well, we'll consider how how we want to play this. See if we can get some licensed audio in here next time.
Yes, absolutely. Just little snippets of it. You know, if we're short enough, it's okay, right?
Right? Yeah, sure. We'll have to brush up on the legalities.
Tokyo Beatdown is this like
Huh.
weird 80s Japanese cop drama, but it's like I said, it's a beat 'em up. Really funny, really fun.
Okay. Like a side scroller.
Yeah,
Nice.
few I'm leaving out on this list. The games I'm curious about now. Dokapon Journey is an RPG slash board game. I've never heard of that before. I
I
don't know if
have.
you have.
That's the first I've heard of it.
Never heard that combo. So I'm really interested.
Yeah, that sounds cool as shit.
Hi Hamtaro.
Really?
I played just an eensy beensy bit of the game. And it seems cute and just something about it just seemed like it could just suck me in. I was also I was into Hamtaro for way too long. Like could
Really?
not admit for how long I liked Hamtaro.
I don't. I mean, I know I know of Hamtaro, and I know Hamtaro well enough to say that I think at some point in the sounds that are affiliated with the show, the hamster says Hamtaro or something. It's about how it's
Like
the
hammy ham
franchise.
or something like that. Yeah,
Sure.
you're
Yeah,
not
I don't.
far off. I think it was on like I'm trying to remember recently. I used to watch cartoons on, and it was one of those shows that I would watch. It was a cartoon I would watch before school while eating waffles. I have a very vivid memory.
Interesting.
It was on like Fox cartoons or something like that. It's one of those weird. Why did that Japanese show make it over? But it was cute, very cute. So I think it'd be a fun one.
Okay. All right. Interesting.
Rune Factory could be a fun one. 2 weeks seems like it's gonna be one of those games where it's like, oh, that wasn't enough time.
Yeah.
Rune Factory is the first real evolution of Harvest Moon,
That's right. I knew it sounded familiar.
but you're also still farming as well too. So it
Right.
combines action role playing with the farm sim. Seems comfy and fun.
Big fan of those titles.
Valkyrie Profile is one that it's funny. It's on my curious list because earlier I said I really don't like tactics games. That's totally what this is.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to get into them. You know, there's something like my friend was so into Final Fantasy Tactics or Final Fantasy Advanced, whatever it was. And I just
Mm-hmm.
wanted to be into it as much as he was. And I was not.
Absolutely relatable. There was something about coveting the games of your friends because now I feel like games are widely accessible to anybody on almost any platform, right? You have modern games that are releasing on all platforms simultaneously for the most part anymore. You can stream games. Yeah, you don't ever have to even have the console or the platform or the ability to play the games to experience the game itself if you really wanted to. But I remember growing up with handhelds and, PlayStations are starting to come out. You got the PSP, you've got Xbox, you still have some PC gaming, absolutely. And just seeing the games that your buddies or friends are playing, and that's where everybody falls into these niches or these niche cliques
Yeah.
of I'm a Nintendo gamer. I'm an Xbox gamer. I'm a PS5 gamer. Anymore, it really just breaks down to semantics. Like, do you like the social platform on one over the other more or not? Yeah, but like if you grew up with a certain system, then you were playing specific games, and then that was what kind of molded your introduction into video games for the most part.
Well, it started as PC, and then we got a PlayStation,
Yeah,
and then from the PlayStation, I went to GameCube. And then for my GameCube is really, really was like, fuck, man, I need something to actually play some shooters and stuff. And that's why I got into my PC more. And I was like PC master until I got the fucking DS. And I was like, I'm kind of a Nintendo fanboy. Like, I love these titles. Like, even though, like,
dude.
there's a certain time where it was lame to be into these cutesy wootsy ones. But now it's not, and it's like the cartoony games. When you're talking about the GameCube and PlayStation 2, Xbox, now you're looking back a lot and people are like, "Ah, that was that gritty time." It was the toned down color. Everything's in sepia or dark greenish tones. And then you look over at the GameCube and it's just like fucking Mario Sunshine. How bright can we make it?
Man, that's our next podcast right there. Is all about the GameCube. Probably my personal favorite console.
I didn't appreciate it when I had it, and I didn't get the really good games for it when I had growing up with the GameCube.
That's fair.
I got Animal Crossing just like days before maybe like on the day of moving from Sioux City out to Sydney. And that is the middle of summer, so I have no friends. You can't make friends. Like it's impossible to. So I just spent my summer just fucking Animal Crossing on the GameCube. That was, that's why I love Animal Crossing to this day. Is I'm sure because of that core feeling right there.
Hell yeah.
I had fucking Billy Hatcher and uh
Absolutely.
PN03. I don't know if you ever played PN03.
Oh, Piano 3 is awesome. Such a weird game.
Good if you have like a whole catalog. Not good if it's one of your only.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, if you're just exploring the archives, it's a fun play. But yeah, if that's if that's one of your only sources of entertainment, you might be better clawing your eyes out, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, that game would have done great on the DS. I'd like to see a remake. I'd like to see a D-make of that on the DS.
A D-make. I like that.
They have a few D-makes out for the DS. I believe that there's a Halo D-make out there.
Really? Like an actual, like a Halo shooter game?
If we had listeners and if we got comments, they would be controversial comments, being like, "Well, I mean, it was actually it was an alpha, or pre-alpha game, blah blah." But there's also the people be like, "No, they've said that was not. It was not actually. It was not made by Bungie, and it was just a fan-made game." And you'd have all these different arguments about it. But yeah, there is you can get a Halo homebrew.
That's wild. I'd like to take a quick step back. Is that your Karen voice?
I don't know what voice that
was awesome. You should
It was my like high pitched nerdy like whiny
love
voice.
it. You should. That's definitely needs to be a thing.
That's okay. Yeah, I'll see if I can ever do it again. My throat's pretty roached right
Perfect.
now.
Well, we can keep you there, I think.
Yeah, it won't be too.
No, I think it'll be all right.
When do you think the last game came out for the DS?
Oh, I mean, my gut tells me a while ago, but you never know. Like not talking about like homebrew, like an official release.
No, an official release.
Jeez, yeah. I'd have to say it's been a while. So 2016.
Oh, you gave it more credit than it deserves. 2014.
Wow, really?
So now, next year,
okay,
it'll be an interesting statistic, right? If we would have started it next year, it'd be better because 2004 it's announced. 2014 the final game comes out.
I know.
2024 Pocket Cast is released.
Pocket Cast is simulcasting every week.
Uniting all of the portable handheld retro enthusiasts across the world.
Damn, there's a tag.
That's this funny thing is that there's no new handheld. Like if you look up, there's one new handheld. I can't think of the name of it right now. It's got the little crank on the side of it. It's like it plays 1-bit games.
Crank?
Yeah, you haven't seen this, huh?
What are you talking
about? Crank handheld game.
Yeah, this sounds made the fuck up.
Playdate is what it's called.
Okay.
And it's like it's interesting. I would definitely enjoy playing it. I believe the asking price is a little high for it, for my economic level.
What is the function? The mechanical crank? Is it?
It's basically just to play with. It's an analog controller.
Interesting.
And I used it in a lot of different ways. And so
Huh.
This is the only new handheld console to come out besides all these retro, emulating things that you see all the time.
Well, but I feel like there's a case to be made that the Switch is a handheld.
I don't.
No, not at all.
I don't.
That's now it would. I feel like your requirement is that it needs to be pocketable.
It needs to be pocketable.
Absolutely. All right, I respect that.
Yeah. I think it's a fair stance.
That definitely takes the well, not that there's a newer PSP, but I would assume for you the PSP still where does that fall in there for you? Like the original PSP Slim?
No, just the PSP. I think if you looked at it right now, you'd be like, oh yeah, that's smaller than the iPhone.
All right, that's fair. That's a fair point.
I don't know if we could look up measurements on that. Decide that.
Man, and I only really ever held a PSP a couple of different times.
Yeah, I'm with you there.
Dimension. The Steam Deck also does not count. Yeah, no. Of course, it's far too large.
I don't feel like the Switch Lite really fits in your pocket, and if it does, you're gonna fuck that screen up. I would even say part of my lack of love for the 3DS may be on my end because I got the XL.
So it's lack of portability.
Yeah.
That's fair. Okay, backstepping real quick. So the PSP was 6.7 by 2.9 by 9 and 2/23.
That's an above average penis. That can fit just fine in your pocket.
Yeah, so not Jesus, not really that big at all. All right, so let's look at the Switch here. 3.6 by 8.2. So obviously definitely much larger than the PSP, but not by a whole lot. So you've got about an extra inch in height and inch and a half, 2 inches on the length. I mean, that's definitely about probably a little bit bigger than the iPhone Max is right now.
iPhone Max 6.7.
Is it 6.7?
iPhone 14 Plus.
Yeah. 6.7. Let's see if I can get a diagonal read on this.
Riveting content here.
Yeah, good stuff. Either way, I would reasonably.
I'm gonna say that 3DS is the death of. It marks the end of handheld gaming.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. I haven't been keeping up with Nintendo news. Obviously, if there was a large gaming company that I would expect to put a handheld out, like a true handheld, it would be Nintendo.
Well, what's also interesting is that the DS was supposed to come out as a companion to the Game Boy Advance. Ironic, being that it has a Game Boy Advance slot in it, but it wasn't put out. It wasn't originally made to replace the Game Boy Advance. It was supposed to be its own catalog. DS would go on, Game Boy would go on. I would like to see a new Game Boy.
I wouldn't mind a new Game Boy either. I don't know necessarily what specifications I want.
The Game Boy Advance and Game Boy Advance is like, I think, I don't know the exact time frame, but I'm thinking 5th to 6th grade, probably, maybe a little bit longer than that. Obviously, it would
Sure.
have been longer than that, but that's like 6th grade is about when I stopped playing games. That's when you're like middle school. You don't want to be seen playing video games or Pokemon in public. You know, you want to be you're trying to be a teen and not playing a
Right.
handheld game, a Game Boy. That's for boys. I'm not a boy. I'm a teen. You know, some shit like that. And so, Game Boy Advance is where I kind of fall off. I don't have a lot of nostalgia there. I have a lot. I mean, there's somewhere I'm like, I remember seeing this game and wanting it. But Game Boy Color is where a lot of my nostalgia sits. And so it's fun to go back. And I
Absolutely.
know that we've discussed not limiting ourselves to the DS and considering throwing in Game Boy Advance, Game Boy Color, PSP. Um, that's got to be like 5,000 games, probably. I'm gonna say it's probably 5,000.
It would have yeah, it would have to be a massive number. And maybe we could do that periodically, you know, do a
Yeah, I think that's a fun idea. I think it's
I'm definitely excited to dig into some of these titles. Is there anyone in particular that you want to focus on these next couple of weeks?
these next couple of weeks. I would not mind digging into the old favorite, Hotel Dusk,
Ooh,
or an RPG. I wouldn't mind. I would also not mind something that I haven't played before. Blood of Bahamut. Still don't know if I'm saying it right.
Bahamut.
I've never
Bahamut.
played Bahamut.
Yeah, sure, that works.
Bahamut.
Okay, see that, and there you lost it. You almost had it.
If you feel like doing something experimental, two of the best shooters on the DS are Dementium the Ward, Dementium the Ward 2, I think is what it's called, and then also Moon. That is those are some decent FPS games.
I would like to see a decent FPS game. I played a couple just toying around.
Yeah, I played a little bit of Call of Duty.
Yeah, I
Was not
did.
impressed.
I was not impressed either.
Surprising to see that to see, and this is a team that I think is no longer together. Renegade Kid. It was founded in 2007, defunct in 2016. Sorry to say.
Mm,
Excellent. Excellent. They put out, yeah, Dementium the Ward, Moon, Dementium 2, ATV Wild Ride. I don't know anything about that one.
interesting.
Mutant Muds.
Mm,
I'm sure you've heard of that game.
nope.
Uh, oh, it's like I believe it was a platformer, like pretty popular.
Okay. Okay.
We're lucky where we are in the same city, the same town.
Hmm.
We hang out weekly.
At least
We still have the local wireless communication abilities with our DSs.
true.
So we can play games and review them, kind of, if that's what we're doing. They can be multiplayer games, so we can actually experience the multiplayer aspect to it. Phantasy Star Zero was a game that I quite enjoyed. I believe it's a bit repetitive. I think one of the main reasons I liked it was to put on a podcast, hop online, play with some people, find a squad, and then just go run through these dungeons. There are also a few games that are. There's a real lean into the old school RPG.
Hmm.
Is it Heroes of Might and Magic? I believe that's like the old school first person going just dungeon crawling,
Right.
and it's a hard, unforgiving
Oh,
type game.
brutal.
You also then have the Dark Spire. Same idea.
Hmm.
They even have a setting where you can get the graphics to be like, I don't know if it's vector style or like Amiga style, but something along those lines. There's a classic one called Solar. I can't pronounce the name of it. Red the Hunter is the sub name. Like Solar Chirobo.
I'm looking for it.
It's kind of a furry game. No offense to any furries listening out there.
Interesting. Okay.
Just a heads up to anybody. It's an interesting, unsuspected thing. But the story is supposed to be really good. I've played it a little bit. The art's really good. I'm not stoked on the controls, but like I said, I've barely got it.
I gotcha. Yeah, I see that
Uh,
title in here. Yep, we want to lock that in. Let's just do it. You've sold me
Lock which one
the
in?
the furry title.
The furries.
Mhm.
All
Yeah,
right.
start strong.
So this is one of the newer releases.
Oh, really?
Oldest release? How do you say that? It's the newer, yeah, it's a newer release. The one of the old last releasing
Holy
titles.
shit, you made that so complicated.
I did. I truly did.
So this, in terms of the history of the lifetime of DS titles being released, this title came later in that time frame. So it is the newest of the games, or one of them. Good. Okay, gotcha.
Released in America in 2011. North America,
Okay,
2000.
yeah, by Namco. Okay, so Sola 2 Robo or Solata Robo. No, I have no idea. Red the Hunter. All right, got it.
Yeah. Also, one of the most expensive games, I believe, for collectors.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh? Not a lot of titles floating around, or what? Do you know?
Well, being made 2011, you're near the end of. I believe 3DS has come out by that point.
Yeah, that's a good point. Not a lot of DS loyalists out there.
I mean, don't make me feel bad. All right, 2011 is when the 3DS comes out,
Okay, yeah,
and that pretty well wrap us up then. Next time, names to tweet at us with.
perfect.
We'll have potentially a Discord server for you to comment in.
Yeah. Until the next time.
Game on, gamers.